Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Guy on Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew. I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I'm joined from across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how you doing this week?
I am doing good. I'm doing okay. The sun's trying to come in. Thankfully, I have the window closed, but they can't always get always a little bit of peeking through.
Yeah,
So I might be adjusting my face a little bit to make sure the sun's not blaring in my eyelids.
there's that. I mean, gives you good lighting, but yeah, helps you be able to see. That's the thing. Yes,
I don't want to go blind.
yeah, that is fair. Um, Speaking of going around the sun and the movements of the sun, history is replete with turning points. And though that comes from another Star franchise, it rings true in any franchise, including the Star Wars canon timeline. Of course, how in universe historians and real world fans come to define the most important of these events depends a lot on what we consider the overall thrust of the grand narrative. And so this week, we count down each of our top 5 most important events with some honorable mentions, but it's another fun way, fun but hopefully interesting way of diving into our perennial question: what is Star Wars? To help us do that, we got Beaumont Kin on the line. Let's hope that'll be amazing.
Chris Kimchaw's here. Where?
I know that'd be great. I got to read his books first, and then we'll get him on.
Yes, I want to interview him.
Talk about Liverpool.
There
you go. So, no guests this week, but hopefully some things down the pipe. Get the socials, get the plugs. Follow us mainly on Blue Sky at Ion Cannon. Biscuit.social. We're still on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Not really yet. We're up. I guess you're updating Twitter a little bit, are you?
Not always. Only when we have someone who I know is on Twitter going to join us.
Yeah. So mainly, if you want to interact with us, go to Blue Sky. That's where we usually the more monitored account, as they say. But I guess if you send a DM through Instagram, I'll get it. So
you send a DM through Discord, I'll get it.
So yes, a DM through Discord. We'll get to the Discord shortly in a second. But first off, if audio is more your speed, right after we record, I will throw this up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I think there are some other podcast grabbers that get from Spotify and Apple or the RSS feed or whatever it is, however that works. The worms in the machine extend our reach. The tentacles extend our reach. I know how RSS feeds work, sort of, but anyway, so please do check us out there. And yes, speaking of all that, we are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld podcast network here on the Underworld YouTube channel. We have YouTube memberships, we have super chats. So if you comment down below, we will get to the comment as soon as possible. If you super chat us, we will get to it immediately. I'll interrupt myself if I have to get to that. Also, check out everything going on around the network. The flagship on Thursdays, Hannah doing stuff on the Ray side every night pretty much, and Tractor Beam, which I'll mention in a second. But first off, the Discord server, down in the description below, you can get a minty fresh link just to get in, join the conversation. The water's fine. We're still talking Andor, we're talking canon, we're talking legends, we're talking a whole bunch of stuff, video games, Fortnite, all that fun stuff. So check the description below. And then speaking of Fortnite, Joel, anything fun happening in the Discord?
I think we'll be doing another game night because I think this is the last week of the Star Wars Fortnite event. So we're definitely going to be milking that for all it's worth. And then after that, not sure, we might finally switch it up and do some movie nights again. Nice. So be on the lookout.
Now, is that blue milk or green milk?
Probably some blue milk.
All right. That's right. So definitely check that out. As I mentioned just before, engage the Tractor Beam Comics Reviews every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We look at the books that came out that day. Of course, one that came out a number of weeks ago, a story that came out a number of weeks ago. But yeah, this Wednesday right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch. We're talking. Chris Abbott and I are talking about Fear of the Jedi number 5 of 5. Jedi Knights number 4 and the Insider Short number 231. So please do check that out right here this Wednesday on the Underworld YouTube channel, etc. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, also proud part of the Underworld network. So happy to keep that on rolling. Alrighty. We got some more time to talk about this week in Star Wars. So how about it, Joel?
Yeah, right. So for this week of Star Wars was brought to you by our friends at the Daughters of Ferrix podcast. Probably Ellie, because she's probably the one who does the Twitter. Responding to someone on Twitter. Sorry, son again. Talking about how their reaction to Andor. Let's see. Someone had a reaction to Andor, and then they showed pictures of the Return of the Jedi ending, where everyone's celebrating the fall of the Empire. This is not the fair. Someone else says generally you cannot tell me that the Empire rises again. Like fundamentally, it just does not. Probably referring to how much we see revolution and stuff, and then it's like Empire really rises again, with Starkiller Base and the First Order and blah 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 blah. Palpatine all along. Palpatine all along. To which Star the Ferrix responds. This is Dodger's Ferrix response to this Twitter account. It doesn't. The First Order is able to develop in the first place because of the Republic's appeasement and latent imperial sentiment among elites. They gain ground and execute a coup. And the reason it gets that far is that the populace didn't care enough before it happened to stop it. If authoritarians are gaining power, the system capitulates to them, and the general populace is too distracted or justifiably distracted to care. Then a minority of fascists can cause a lot of damage before enough people learn to give an SHIT. This should sound familiar. We'll picture of General Hux looking up at the Starkiller base, all sad about to cry. Happy tears. Happy tears. The Empire doesn't return. The First Order is a military junta that tries to strong-arm their way into power and fails. Long term, they're roundly overthrown by public revolt rather than organized military forces, because it turns out people don't want to be ruled by fascist losers. You can totally say that you wish this had been on screen, and I fully agree. Though it's worth saying that a lot of the separatist motivations are also fairly off screen in the prequels. That's Star Wars for you. But this is a message that Episode 9 does clumsily attempt to get across. Image of the People's Fleet from Episode 9, all the starships. On paper, I think the steps of the First Order is in some way more believable type and authoritarian rise than even Palpatine did all of this in the prequel's depiction of the Empire. Whether or not Lucasfilm was interested in the potential is another thing, but it's there. And that's kind of it. So yeah, Empire doesn't rise again. First Order is a small military junta that strong arms its way to power for like a good year, and then gets its butt kicked.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how the apathy part is. I don't want to say it's prophetic, just because it's just the history. We're talking about history repeating itself. Yeah, it was. Again, you could say, "Oh yeah, JJ was being prophetic." Well, no, this is how democracy isn't stolen; it's given away, right? But again, they're only for a year. Yeah, I guess here's the question there, though. Is that the realistic? I don't know how realistic that part is. Just because, the U.S. Constitution, and I'm not saying they're necessarily that authoritarian yet, but, there are only 4 years allowed here. Again, maybe Trump will try and figure out a way to stay on for a third term or fourth term or whatever, or he won't. But also, how long is Putin be in power? How long was Pinochet in power? So yeah, I guess that being said, there are also lots of coups that try and fail. It's kind of hit or miss. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what you think.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's definitely fair. I mean, I guess technically speaking, the First Order was around for officially 7 years. So they only controlled all the galaxy for one.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I guess you could just say, well, I mean, they were partially in control. They were like a little control, and then they were all in control. And once they were all in control, once Palpatine came back, it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Screw that. We should get Ellie on, and we could discuss the politics of the sequel era in the future.
That's a good topic. Good topic. Yeah.
I will think about that for later. Another time. Off screen, off behind the scenes, folks. Thinking.
Yeah. Why not?
But I just wanted to show this 'cause I think it's a very interesting way to look
Mhm.
at the First Order's rise to power and how it doesn't
Yeah.
negate anything the original trilogy did, which I think is
Mhm.
something a lot of people tend to
Mhm.
see in a very cynical
Yeah.
viewing.
I think another thing to say is they are wannabe Imperials. That they have, it's the dark side of nostalgia. Um,
Yes.
to say they want to bring this part back. What, we want to bring this part of the original trilogy back? No, this is the wrong part of the original trilogy. Brendel Hux and Armitage Hux. Armitage Hux did not watch the Star Wars original trilogy. Clearly didn't get the message. um, yeah. So yeah, they kind of bring back. I mean, even there's an interesting thing in Legacy of Vader, where the last issue of Legacy of Vader, which we talked about on the Tractor Beam last week, about how Kylo Ren, he's both a student of history, but he also wants to let it all die, let it all burn. Um, so he's got that inner conflict within him, almost like the First Order has that inner conflict, right? That they they're so against the past, they're so against what's established there already, that they uh just become this replica of this past empire that was frankly more effective. They never, I
Lasted
mean,
longer.
it lasted longer. uh I mean, that's the thing with Kylo Ren is, he's a wannabe Sith. Palpatine and Vader were actually Sith lords. you um and so it's this weird thing. I mean, that's the tension Charles Soule is addressing, getting at this book. But yeah, I mean, it's a tension that Adam Driver portrays. I mean, one of the tensions is also, of course, the Kylo Ren Ben Solo tension is another more personal one. But I mean, maybe it is. I mean, that's the thing. Is sorry, I need to drink my coffee. So Han Solo doesn't really care much about history either. It's just that he cares about Leia, so Leia cares about history.
And Luke, don't forget Luke.
And Luke, yeah. So I don't know, like, it's kind of just trying to think about, just a bit of a tangent, but thinking about Kylo Ren's character. We were talking about this. He's last week. He's this brazen, brash, swashbuckling kind of guy. Like, gets straight from his father. We'll see that in the last issue of the Rise of Skywalker adaptation. But yeah, it's just this interesting layers to him, where again he's also a student of history, but wants to burn history. He has his grandfather's mask, but goes to Mustafar, but also wants to let the past die, and thinks Anakin was a failure for coming back and all that. But Vane knows better. So uh, yeah, it's embodied in this one character in this comic because it's on my mind, because we're just reading it. But um, yeah, it's a great question.
There
What's
is one
Yeah.
thing I would love to see, and maybe the comic can't try. I'm having words today.
Okay.
Words. Maybe the
Doing
Charles Soule
talking.
comic doesn't have enough time to deal with this, or maybe that's just in the focus, which
Mhm.
it's completely understandable.
Yeah.
You can't you want everything, but you can't expect everything. Got to, you know.
Mhm.
And it is something that Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire gets into it with just a little bit. And also a little bit of
Mhm.
the Last Jedi novelization gets into it as well. It's this interesting generational divide
Mhm.
between older First Order officers who were around and probably junior officers when the Empire were alive, and
Mhm.
then I guess Hux and lesser extent Kylo's generation of officer.
Yeah.
Because there is a divide there where the older officers do really like the Empire and think the First Order is just, oh, let's bring that back.
Mhm.
Hux sees the First Order as like, oh no, we're gonna be better than the Empire. We're gonna outdo them in every way. We're gonna make the Empire look
Yeah.
like a joke. And another interesting thing
Mhm.
is when Palpatine comes back, um, and this is like hinted at just a little bit
Mhm.
in the Rise and Fall of Galactic Empire, and I wish there was some way we could figure out how to get the full story of this. Of
Mhm.
there's a divide between the older officers who are like, oh heck yeah, Palpatine back. Back to the glory to the Emperor. It's like we're back on his side. We're all ready to serve. And then younger officers are like, who cares about Palpatine? He's an old.
Yeah.
Is he even alive? It's like, who cares about this old dude? So that's kind of another interesting thing of like, even within the First Order's coalition group, it's like you got that older officer like Palpatine back, all hail the Emperor. Yeah, whatever he says, we do it. And then it's like, hey, wait a minute, why do we have to be loyal to this guy? So it's sort of that interesting divide. I hope one day we can see more of it somewhere. I think that'd be cool.
I mean, I think there's room. I mean, in this comic to do. I mean, it's starting to, right? I mean, even Kylo Ren, he's like Palpatine. Palpatine, I don't care about Palpatine. He's dead too, because they're on Naboo in this comic, talking about Sheev, and even he doesn't care about Sheev either, or he claims not to. That's the thing. Right. He's claiming not to. The more you try and push against something, the clearer it is that you're fixated on it. It's just a personality thing that is just pretty constant. Has some dark aspects, like the most homophobic people are likely closeted. That's that dynamic in a very profound example and troubling example. But yeah, the color. I think there might be just Charles Soule knows how long this comic book is going to be. I asked him in his Discord. He didn't answer. All he answered is, "I know how long it's going to be." So I
hope
think
it's longer than 10. Give it 25, like the last Vader book.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, there isn't time to go into it during the plot of. Well, maybe there is. I mean, if this goes into the story of Rise of Skywalker, it might end just before. I don't know, but it's in that year between Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, I think it's possible that more about Sheev comes up, because everything about Vader is coming up. It's even in the title. Yeah.
I have so much about the idea of like the split between loyal to an ideology and then loyal to a person, and then by the fall of Galactic Empire also kind of hints of like if Palpatine hadn't come back, maybe the First Order actually would have lasted longer, but Palpatine's own ego really kind of screwed them over.
Which is odd because so good.
No, I think it's actually very true, because it's like I mean, you see this with like the Nazis, where it's like you have the movement, but then it's like who kind of subsumed it all into his own personality, and then he really screwed everybody over. So it's like became all about him. It's like not the new order ideology, and then it's sort of like it's really interesting, and I don't want to turn this too much into that kind of discussion. Save it for another time. It's like really interesting stuff.
Yeah. Last point I'll make is it's odd how he screwed over the First Order, because they were created to basically give birth to the Final Order, and so his arrogance is his weakness.
It's so true.
And Rey's faith in her friends wasn't hers. So there we go. Sorry, guys. All right. Must have choked on something. Anyway, I'm not choking on my aspirations, I promise. Just on air and water. Boy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everyone. All right. I got mine carrying over from last week. So I'm gonna have some water. 1 second. There we go. Carrying over from last week about the Guardian Protocols. And speaking of Charles Soule, a comic book by Charles Soule. Wait, sorry, everyone. I'm okay. Yes. Where's my Rhydonium? Come on. Yes. Comic. So, the thought was this question. I think I know Alex Damon, Star Wars Explained, did this video about what Palpatine would have known about the Guardian Protocols and how the Jedi would have responded once the Separatist crisis hit, and how they might have they might have reinstated the Guardian Protocols or what. But sorry. I'll be okay.
Bless you. Don't die. Yeah. Don't die on us.
No. How I'm gonna get posture here. How they might have reinstated the Guardian Protocols to deal with the Separatist crisis, and that is how they end up being generals in the Clone Army, and Padawans or commanders and all that. how everything gets so centralized. What I want to know and what I want to see, and maybe again, this might be in Trials of the Jedi, might be in something else. Do they suspend them? This is the question. Do they suspend them at the end of the Nile Crisis and then reinstate them for the Clone Wars? Do they make them permanent? To say, hey, this worked out. This is kind of just how we do things now. Let's just keep it going. I mean, you see in Episode 1, you see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. They're sent, and they're sent by Valorum, but also sent by the Council to Naboo to deal with this thing. You know, I mean, I gather Council could have said, "Hey, Qui-Gon, can you go? We'd like you to go to this thing. Is that all right? You good?" And then you'd be, yes, of course, I'll negotiate a peace here. You and Obi-Wan can go to this, or he could have been ordered. Say, we order you to go. We know, for example, you know, Anakin wanted to go to Utapau because Palpatine stoked his ego for that, but they sent Obi-Wan instead, and they made a collective decision about that, and told Anakin to stay put, basically to spy on the. Well, they asked him to spy on the Chancellor, but also, you know, Mace Windu telling Obi-Wan to stay in the Jedi Temple when he's about to go and arrest Palpatine. These kinds of more rigid hierarchical structures, right? Again, generals. Ahsoka is a commander because she's a Padawan, right? Those things. So I'm wondering, because that's the thing that the Guardian protocols really speak to, is that more rigid hierarchical structure with orders and assignments. Also, fast tracking. I mean, Obi-Wan doesn't get fast tracked, but we see younglings and Padawans. I mean, well, Ahsoka does get fast tracked in a way, right?
Anakin does.
Yeah, Anakin gets fast tracked, but well, no, as Obi-Wan. Well, for example, Obi-Wan wasn't fast tracked. He's 25 and he's still a Padawan. Ahsoka, or is Ahsoka? Well, maybe this is kind of my answer here. The answer to my question, a little bit. Ahsoka is fast tracked. She's thrown into this war, and it's not necessarily because of protocols, but she's given these missions and these assignments. And again, that 5th episode of Ahsoka really goes into it beautifully. How her most formative years are in the middle of this war, this galaxy-spanning war. Obviously, there wasn't a choice. I'm just wondering what kind of are the guarding protocols just part of the culture of the Jedi at this point? Is that what's going on? Maybe what we see in the Acolyte a little bit. You know, how the Council orders the team to leave, and then Soul betrays that order, and Vern has to clean up the mess in more not confusing, complicated ways and conflictual ways. Yeah, so there's that. When were they abrogated? Were they reinstated, or were they made permanent? Is that also part of what Kiev is thinking? Is I can't be part of an institution that is so fearfully rigid like this, and tell me, don't go save your friends. And I brought up Kiev last week on Track as well. So that's my questions about the Guardian protocols. We don't know. We don't have a story yet. What we do have is friend of the pod, historian of Barleth, responded. Joel, you posted this question on Blue Sky about the Guardian protocols, and friend of the pod down in the Discord, great contributor in the Discord, and they said, I think most of them were rolled back, but some kept. So here's an interesting one. The detail about recruiting droids or regarding droids staffing Jedi outposts doesn't appear accurate even in the Acolyte, and it's time material. So, as in, well, yeah. So I guess maybe that's another thing is that you have in our. She's out in the galaxy. There's the guy taking the Barash vow in that temple there. So, yeah, there are sentient beings, not just droids out there. So that's possibly true. The use of battle sabers for training sabers. The fact, I mean, that was definitely a very, very important visual clue in visual cue, I should say, in the Shadow of Starlight comic, that before the Guardian protocols, the lightsabers were opulent and very well crafted, and finely crafted on the hilts even. And after it says, we don't have time for that. Just put the thing together. Take your care with the kyber crystal, and go to Ilum and do the ritual. Do that. Take care for that, but don't worry about any kind of the outside expression of personality. We don't have time. We don't have this. There's just more. It's too urgent. This weapon is your life, which we never hear in the High Republic. We never hear anyone say this weapon is your life. Like, we hear things about you don't need a lightsaber. And so, yeah, that's it's my way of asking, what is the long-term impact of the Nihil conflict on the Jedi, and the Guardian protocols, an example of it, an instantiation of it that we see all the way to the Clone Wars. So, yeah, bunch of thoughts. I don't know, Joel, if you have any response, any thoughts there.
I don't know, but the Jedi do last a couple more 100 years after the High Republic, so clearly they're doing something right.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I don't know, but again,
They do okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
they do okay until Sheev does his thing, and then
So I don't know. It beats me, man. I feel like it's one of those questions where, like, I'm just gonna keep my eye out for Guardian protocols when I listen to Live the Jedi.
Yeah,
not
definitely.
Trials of the Jedi.
Yeah, Trials of the Jedi.
So yeah, I'll just have to see.
Yeah.
They clearly still had Outpost, I guess, when even for a couple more 100 years. So
yeah, there we go. Fun times. Interesting. Again, the unanswered questions. We don't actually have answers to these questions, but fun thing to wonder. Hopefully we will. I mean, it isn't the most important thing, but it is something that signifies something else. It signifies where the Jedi are at. Is this the beginning of the end to Order 66 and all that? So, yeah, one of those questions we've had about the High Republic since day one, and Guardian protocols seem to be a clue pointing to that. So, fun times. All right. Speaking of history, speaking of galactic turning points, let's get to our main topic. Before I turn it over to you, I do want to set up the ground rules of how we do a top 5.
Yeah,
and also we can both talk about our kind of historical assumptions or the assumptions that we've done, because, like, pretending to be good historians that we aren't.
I don't have a degree. Actually, no, I don't have a history degree. I got poli-sci degree.
Yeah, we have poli-sci degrees, which and I have some other degrees. Anyway, but to lay down our methodology here, and just our biases and assumptions that we're carrying into this, because that's the thing. And this is the first assumption, is that not just in, like I said off the top, not just in a fictional universe, but even in the real world, a real world approach to history always has, I mean, you're right. If you're writing a history, especially, you're trying to answer the question, why did this happen? Why did X happen? What are the causes that created that? So that means that there's always a narrative that's going to a certain point in a certain perspective, certain place. That's just unavoidable, both because of the way our minds work. We're trained, our minds are trained to just conceive of things in narratives. That's why fictional storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to express meaning, because it's our way of grasping it. Maybe you could argue the most powerful way to express meaning, potentially. But also because, we're trying to explain this process of why something happens. And so what we choose, my point being, the things we chose are very clear, at least for me, clearly driven by, what do I think is the most important thing about the Star Wars universe? What are the most important things maybe that happen? There could be multiple, but so the way we chart that history. A second assumption I have is that history in Star Wars can more or less progress like real world history. And so there are real world parallels that I'll bring up. I'm gonna tell you right now, this guy's coming out at some point.
I can tell you
Because
that the guy on the corner will be important to one of my lists too.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think my finger's pointing the right. Yeah,
that
there we
guy,
go.
this guy,
Yeah, that guy.
Marta's great grandson. Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah, so to real world history, real world parallels are helpful guide. So
Mhm.
that's another assumption that I'm carrying through this as to why I've picked some of the things I've picked.
Mhm.
And Joel, I think the same is true for you. I don't know if you have anything to add or comment on those two.
I picked a lot based on what I thought which events left the largest echoes of
Yeah.
history.
Mhm.
So I'll use the real world example. If I were making a list involving World War II, let's just say the fall of the Carolingian Empire would be in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I can kind of see that. Um, Interestingly, I think for me, it's more the ones I've picked are actually more the culmination of processes, oddly enough. Um, that may have the culmination that have reverberation. So, yeah, we'll get into that. First off, I'll set up the ground rules, the way we do uh, countdown lists, listicle episodes, whatever. Um, we have five, four, three, two honorable mentions, then one. We'll each alternate. If if I have something
Hmm.
that is further down on Joel's list, then Joel can't respond, won't respond.
Right,
It's kind of a spoiler.
right.
But when it comes time for you to make that one, you can introduce it and you can potentially respond back to what I said, possibly debate, and then I can respond to that. If
Yes.
if you say something that isn't on my list at all,
Mhm.
then I can respond. Or if it's an honorable mention,
Okay.
we'll say that if it's an honorable mention. Also, all mine are more or less canon. I don't know, but you said all yours are
Yes,
canon
I
too.
did all canon. I'll say two are
Mhm.
canon, but
Mhm.
they have not been really well documented.
Yeah, mine's similar too. For so a few of those. So yeah, I think that's pretty clear. We'll start with the founding of the Federation, United Federation of Planets. No, I'm just kidding.
And
There we
I'm
go.
gonna do the Eugenics Wars first. I got the Eugenics Wars
I know,
on.
right? I know, right?
When
Oh yeah,
Caelus founded the Empire, all hail
it's a good one.
Caelus.
It's a good one. All right, so I'll let you take over leading us through this.
Right. Oh, funny enough, on the list, you actually are supposed to go first. So you got more talking to do, buddy.
All right, all right, all
Do you
right.
want to do an audible and we switch?
Sure.
Okay. I'll be switching the notes up just so to give you time to talk. I mean, time to breathe.
Yes.
Okay. So
Time to take a swig of coffee.
okay. So let me just redo this list. Sorry, folks.
All good.
All good.
Auditory cue. This
It's
is fun.
okay.
We don't do these kinds of episodes often enough because
You don't.
we like to do. This is going to be more mini conversations, but
Yeah.
the
Okay.
way in. So go for
Okay.
it.
So my number one is one of those
So you're number
culminations.
5.
Number five. Number five. Oh, good thing you said it. Thank you. My number five is one of those culmination ones.
Hmm.
Although it might be interesting as we move forward. My number five
Hmm.
is the Declaration of the Galactic Empire for
Interesting.
a safe and secure society.
Hmm.
This was a hard one because for my number six, I wasn't quite sure what exactly I was going to put. But after
Mhm.
a lot of thinking and a lot of thinking, I was thinking to myself, Empire never really goes away.
Hmm.
It the state of the empire, and to be fair, I mean, who knows? Maybe when we get to the post-ethical stuff, well, maybe they will finally get rid of it.
Mhm.
Some of it's for franchise reasons because Stormtroopers sell.
Yes.
But for me, for in real history for a second,
Mhm.
the empire, the new order ideology,
Mhm.
the aesthetic. Once it's there, it never went
Mhm.
away. And we're just assuming that it all appears with the Empire and not the Legends kind of weird thing of like, why does
Yeah.
this Empire just look like the Galactic Empire but with more paint? Right? It's like even when it fell, it never really vanished. It's like that there are still mobs and Thrawn and
Mhm.
the First Order shows up, and who knows if they're going to be First Order remnants? I mean, I guess we know that a little bit because we know Finn's going to deal with some in the Finn book coming up soon with the Last Order.
Yeah.
Well, probably not that big. We're gonna see remnants in the comics. With
Mhm.
Luke and stuff, and also just like look at the scars the Empire left. Like you think, like Gorman, Lothal,
Yeah.
Mandalorian. The Mandalorian city gets bombarded. They're only now starting
Sundari. Yeah.
to get rebuilt.
Yeah.
Alderaan, a core world that has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. It was the jewel of the galaxy. It was one of the founding
Yeah.
members of the Galactic Republic. Destroyed, gone.
Mhm.
The technological terror of the Empire is something that I think. I mean, who knows? Because again, this is one of those things where it's like because we don't know a lot of the Star Wars past, we don't
Mhm.
really know what the rest of the we don't know what kind of other horrors the galaxy has faced before. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously we know the Nile, but the Nile are bad. I'm sure they're we will talk about them when we get to them. But it's like I feel like nothing has been compared to just the horror and evil that the Empire left and the
Mhm.
echoes had left across the history of Star Wars from its declaration to
Mhm.
up to the Battle of Exegol is there's something that still remains this day. And maybe they'll treat the Battle of Exegol from a mythic historical standpoint as like the final gasp of
Mhm.
this imperial ideology, at least for hopefully a longer time. As Palpatine hopefully blew up for good. But
Yeah.
yeah, like the Empire
Mhm.
just left a scar. I think a permanent scar on the galaxy that I
Mhm.
don't think is ever gonna heal. I don't want there to be, no, the second order in the
Second
post
order.
Tross era.
Oh gosh.
I do think that you can't say that
Mhm.
you'll still see Star Destroyer models, even if they're kind of broken up and rusted, like with the pirates you see in the comics.
Or painted
Still
on with New Republic logos or whatever. You get that
bring
in
out New
Legends,
Republic
right?
Rainbows. Yeah, they did that in Legends. Oh, yay! I just got a response.
Mm.
Oh, yay. But anyway, what was I gonna do?
Train of thought.
But
First,
yeah, or like a stormtrooper helmet. I think you'll always like not
yeah,
in terms of like the second order, but like I do like it when sort of like, hey, look, that pirate guy is
yeah,
still using a stormtrooper helmet. That's how much the Empire
hmm
has scarred the galaxy.
yeah,
And I think only one other thing, and I think you might kind of guess already, can maybe out top that. Which will happen next, but I won't spoil that. So yeah,
yeah.
that's my number five. Any
Mhm.
response, Matt, before we go to your number five?
I will surprise you and say that's part of my honorable mentions.
Interesting.
The
Okay.
rise of the Empire, and I include the Clone Wars in that because the Clone Wars is part of the rise of the Empire.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, just like how um the Clone Wars themselves leave a mark. You see clone troopers and clone trooper armor
Mhm.
everywhere. Yeah, it definitely is the uh I mean, it's definitely the culmination of the rule of two. It's the culmination of the dark side, and therefore it's they definitely the the most powerful single unitary authoritarian institution in galactic history. That's not
That
an
we know of.
exaggeration. That
That
we
we
know,
know. That was.
that we know of in canon history. Um,
Mm.
but definitely had a much bigger reach.
Mhm.
Like I'm comparing the American Empire to the Roman Empire with the British Empire, right? With
Sure.
the British Empire in between, the American Empire is truly global. The Roman Empire just had a lake, you know. So for its time, sure, there would have been bigger empires for its time, but yeah,
China,
yeah, Chinese Empire.
Russia.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's the idea of this all-consuming totalitarian, right?
Mhm.
All-consuming state entity. Um, yeah, it's significant, but its long-term impact remains to be seen. We
Yeah.
don't really know. Yeah.
Mhm.
So go ahead.
I'll just say
Mhm.
and this can be a discussion for another top day, but I'll
Yeah.
just mention now. I'm so curious how they're going to handle what ancienter Sith
Yeah.
empires are like. Because on the one hand,
Mhm.
especially because I think they're going to be a lot more cautious about just kind of making
Mhm.
it fit within the wider context compared to what Legends did. Because those were just hey, there's some fun games and there's some good story, but I don't think they were
Mhm.
like like let's keep it consistent.
Yeah.
But I've always been curious about that because, like, I have, like, I guess, like, I've always wondered,
Mhm.
eh, how is Palpatine just unique as a Sith
Right.
Lord and the technological horror he created with the Empire,
And
which
terror
is
with the Death Star.
and yeah, which is actually something the Maul show might actually deal
Mm.
with a little bit because apparently there's some like interviews of like Maul's like he comes from this age of magic and wonder, and now here just
Yeah.
comes the Empire, just destroying anything beautiful and magical, even
Interesting.
evil magical, and just like technology and boring gray and bureaucracy. And I wonder, like, is that just unique to Palpatine in the Empire, or were like ancient Sith like this, or well, or were they different? Like,
Yeah.
I'm very curious of like just is the Empire truly the
True.
first true unitary attempt at the galaxy that almost succeeded? And
True.
I'll be very curious to see how that plays out as we expand the past.
True. It's the only one we know of. There you
Yeah.
go. All right. My number 5,
Mhm,
and I should also add, there's a bit of speculation is also allowed. I
mhm.
think, especially for past events. I put
I got
the
that too. I got that
yeah,
too.
I put the Jedi Mandalorian War and Tar Vizsla.
Okay.
And the reason we don't really know much of it at all,
Mhm,
but what we do know is, of course, Tar Vizsla, he's a Jedi,
mhm.
Mandalorian, and there's the dark saber, and he yanks it, whatever.
Yoink.
Uh, Beautiful animation in Rebels,
Mhm,
and leads this whole faction kind of away from Republic politics and away from Republic society,
mhm,
and this whole corner of the galaxy that comes under this Mandalorian uh, kind of grouping, whatever. And they develop through this war, they develop this way of fighting, combating against the Jedi. And
mhm,
we see that with Sabine and the shield and the grappling cord thing,
mhm,
different things, and the jetpacks themselves, right? The
mhm,
character Jedi able to jump. In response, I can imagine, this is more a bit of speculation, also being one of the things that harden the Jedi, that
mm,
develop their sense of the guardians of peace and justice, right? That they,
mhm,
because they ultimately have to find a way to overcome the Mandalorians. And
mhm,
so that might be the biggest impact, is to say that they're uh, not a military force, but they're a bit more of a force, right?
mhm,
They lightsabers maybe take on a greater importance in this time. Um, they become, for the Republic, they become this great, again, that they become the guardians of peace and justice and security and safety, and Republic citizens come to look to them
mhm,
to for peace and for safety. I don't know how much of this Legends goes into it all, if it goes into this war at all, but clearly this war is significant enough to, even with Kanan, with Ezra and Sabine, that there's some not kind of bad blood. It's friendly, it's playful then, but that mural on Sundari. Speaking of Sundari, that's not playful. That's this immortalized, like, the Mandalorian's reason for existing is because they fought against the Jedi and the Republic, and that goes all the way to Satine, where she stands apart from the Clone Wars. Um, so both for the emergence of the Mandalorians as a political force, as a society unto itself, and a very militaristic society until Satine comes along, and for the Jedi to become a bit more militaristic, a bit more hardened, a bit more like all the lightsaber forms and all that. Um, what we see, like we saw with the Clone Wars, this Mandalorian War must have been a time where Jedi really developed this sense of urgency about that. So that's a bit out of left field, but I don't know what you think of that. If you ever saw
No,
it.
that's a very interesting one. I actually have never thought about that one. Yeah. But Legends of the Jedi Mandalorians had lots of wars.
Okay.
And that was all, and one thing that's similar to canon is that was all going on when the Sith Empires were around doing their
Right.
thing. So that's a very opaque time.
Mhm.
And I'd be very curious to see if somebody one day they decide to develop it fully.
Mhm.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one.
I mean, I'm really curious about Tar Vizsla as a character too.
Me too. I would
Like,
be very curious to see if
you
they.
mean that story?
Yeah, I would love that.
Mm.
Oh, my cat wants to join me.
There you
Hello.
go. Historical moments in Iron Canon. The cat
Yes,
joining in.
yes, the most historical moments. Um,
There you
yeah, but no. Just let me know if my microphone gets weird because sometimes he sits on the plug.
Okay.
But no, I'm very. That'd be a very interesting one. I don't
Yeah.
know if I have much to say on it, but it's a very good pick.
Yeah.
I love
Thank you.
field. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay. My number 4, it's
Mhm.
one that's been brought up a bunch of times already, but I think no list would be fair without it.
Mhm.
This is the Clone Wars. Yeah, the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cue the
How
music.
how can you not?
Yeah.
So yeah, I picked the Clone Wars because much like the Declaration of the Empire, this is another
Mhm.
one of those. It's actually an interesting one because it's both. I think it's the. Sorry, my cat's really messing with the.
Yeah.
Hang on, Siri.
Mhm.
Am I good? Can I come
Yeah, you're
through?
good. You're good.
Okay, okay.
Keep going.
What I was saying was, both the Clone Wars is both the
Mhm.
culmination of what I consider a very long epoch of tension,
Mhm.
between the core and the outer rim that probably was going on for like probably hundreds of thousands of years.
Before this
Uh,
guy,
yeah, before
he
many
just tapped
guys,
into it. But
they
anyway.
just tapped into it. And also the echoes of the Clone Wars. I consider the Clone Wars the World War One of the Star Wars galaxy.
Mm.
If you know anything about how I feel about World War One changed the world forever.
Mm.
The world we live in today is still built on the blood of World War
Yes,
One.
that's true.
People always say World War Two because that only gets all the movies and got the story. But no. World War One is where it all comes from. World War One was the grand explosion, the death of the old world. And I think the Clone Wars in some ways is the death of the old galaxy.
Mhm.
Like, if you want to do like a very big macro split of the galactic history, I think it's like, I mean, obviously, we have BBY, ABY because of Yavin, because of the fan thing. Go
Sure.
ask Dominic. Dominic's out there. You can feel his tension. But if you want to be like really historic, you're kind of almost like pedantic. I would almost say you can divide the galaxy up between pre-Clone Wars,
Yeah.
post-Clone Wars. Like I would almost, and this is more of a Legends thing, to be fair. So maybe this is a little unfair. I would almost say that
Mhm.
the Jedi Order, you can be divided between pre-Clone Wars Jedi Order and post-Clone Wars Jedi Order. Because I always think the Jedi Order as a single continuum from its birth to the
Mm.
Clone Wars. And this is more of a Legends thing, to be fair, than a canon
Yeah.
thing. I see it, and I see Luke's Jedi Order as a break from the old order and truly a new entity. Now, maybe that doesn't work with canon, and maybe that's going to be more race thing. But but again, the Clone Wars, I do think is sort of the death of the old world. It is the death of the before, and I think the new galaxy, even Ray's galaxy to some extent, is born from the blood of the Clone Wars, and so much of the word. I mean, I talked about the Empire for sure, but I
Yeah.
think, but even more so, the birth of the Clone Wars, the Clone Wars era, really sets up the stage for just so much.
Yeah.
Into those three, and it's only 3 years, but so much, so much changes. The galaxy just shifts
Yeah.
in a seismic way that I don't think it ever goes back. I think much like World War One,
Mm.
the world just shifted completely, and we're
Yeah.
still in it. So yeah, that's why my Clone Wars is number 4.
I'm trying to distinguish between so there's three things. So there's the rise of the empire,
Mhm.
the fall of the Jedi in the Clone Wars themselves. And I guess, I mean, if anything, you could say with the Clone Wars, what makes it distinct, I mean, it's again, Clone Wars and Rise of the Empire. I bundle those two together. Because of course the purpose of the Clone Wars is for the rise of the Empire. But also, yeah, I guess it was the meat toughener. But also, I mean, there's impact, of course, on the Rebel Alliance, as we see with Saw, we see with Mon Mothma, we see with Bail, and so many others, that the Separatists are this first, well, probably first in 200 years, major armed uprising against a Coruscant government.
I really hope that we get a good book that one day kind of puts into perspective how big the Nile was compared to the Separatists.
Yeah.
I need to know.
I mean, there's clear sense that they're a threat, but you know, I can see the Rebel Alliance taking inspiration from the Separatists. I want more of that story, frankly. I want more of what was the Separatist impact in the Rebel Alliance, because
There's some good stuff about how the Rebel Alliance actually tries to not feel like the Separatists. They try to not look like them.
Yeah, well, in the corporate stuff, I imagine too, but I mean, yeah, like, well, I mean, Saw, and we have Lux being in there. I mean, Saw had this vendetta against Separatists because of Stila, but then again, you have Lux being there, and his mother was the Senator Mina. So, yeah, it definitely makes a mark. Again, it's in my honorable mentions, but yeah, there we go. All right, we get to go to my number 4.
Yep, you're number 4.
So this is another kind of off the wall one. You have to hear me out here.
Okay.
When we have no idea when this happened.
Okay.
The construction of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant.
Ooh.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't have in my list. I don't really have in my honorable mentions even the founding of the Jedi Order. Because, and here we go. Where are you? There you are. I imagine the founding of the Jedi Order was just this small, like we have in Legends, this small little group of light side users, Force users.
I'm sorry. Okay, I just want to pause and say, in the Phantom Menace novelization, they say the original Jedi Order was basically just a book study group.
Exactly, and so
I found that funny. So, continue.
And so yeah, and I'll get to why I have a theology time up. It's going to be pretty self-explanatory. The construction of the Jedi Order marks the completion of this process from this small little study group, and they keep building and growing, including people and attracting people and building up to the point where they are now the most important religious group in the galaxy, right? At least in the Galactic Republic. And so they have this massive temple on the galactic capital. It's at this point where they said they've made it. So the real world parallel here is, of course, I mean, you can even there are multiple ones, but the one that comes to mind is how the first Christians were this weird Jewish sect that kind of merged a whole bunch of things in a weird way, a bunch of
carpenter guy.
Yeah, this carpenter guy who was, by the way, executed by the Empire. And yeah, they kept growing, they kept moving, kept developing. This is an interesting time for this. Literally last month, we celebrated the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, which is, in historical terms, the most important moment, I think, in Christian history, frankly, because I know, and this is the distinction historically, in terms of theologically, in terms of what we believe about the universe. Sure, the crucifixion, resurrection of Jesus is the most important, but in terms of a historical organization, I mean, and Nicaea and Constantine making it the state religion, and that Christians were such a big force to be reckoned with. That Constantine had to say, okay, you have these major disputes about who God is and what that means. These disputes are seriously threatening the stability of my empire. Go lock yourselves in a room, figure this out, and I will enforce whatever you guys decide. Basically, obviously more complicated than that, but the founding of the Jedi Temple, to me, is that moment of they are the most important. Again, guardians of peace and justice. People throughout Republic society now literally look up to them as the beacons of light side of the force of just the way to live and the way to seek the common good and to protect the vulnerable. And that's the moment that kind of culminates it with this massive temple that we know 350. It's there. We don't know when this thing is built. I don't think on a Sith shrine.
I will look it up. I will look it up with you.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, built on this Sith shrine. I don't know. I'm trying to think if that's historically significant or not. Obviously, it's. Maybe. To say that there are no more rivals. Of course, on Jeddah there are rivals, and ecumenical guests and others, but yeah, definitely a significant moment in the history of the galaxy. At least what I think is the most important aspect of the history of the galaxy.
No, I mean that's such an interesting thought. Yeah, you're right. It was built over an evil Sith temple, which makes you wonder what was going on Coruscant. Why was there a Sith shrine over on Coruscant? I always forget what came first. Was it the Sith shrine or the temple? Because I know it's like there's sort of this weird back and forth where like the Sith took over and then they built the shrine, and Jedi are like, no, we're gonna put the temple over the shrine to keep the dark side out. So go away, dark side, which they always
legends are canon.
No, it's canon. That's canon, where they build where the Jedi build temples over Sith shrines, because the idea is like to bottle the dark side underneath it with the light. So it's like bam, like it's like squishing a bug. Like take that evil dark side. We don't want you around. And then of course Palpatine, when he takes over, it's like I'm going to turn the temple into the palace. So it's like goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I find that funny. But no, I think that's interesting. I hope they keep the Sith shrine building over the temple thing if we ever get that story fleshed out, because I want that.
Yeah. Cool no, it's in Hierho. Look.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. All right. So
it's in Into the Light.
All right. That's right. No, it's Into the Light and Tear the Nameless. I think it's in both.
Yeah, it's maybe Tear the Nameless mostly. Yeah.
No, I mean like when we go back in time to I want to see what, like, I always forget what came first, the Sith shrine or the Jedi temple. Anyway, that's not important right now. But no, I think I think you're right. I think that's a very, I always do kind of wonder when in canon at least the Jedi moved their headquarters to Coruscant. We don't quite know. In Legends they had it in Coruscant for like thousands of years. So that's a really good one. I love it. That's such a good idea. I don't have much to say on it. I think that's just a really interesting pick. Okay. My number 3. Okay, so my number 3 is interesting because I debated between two of these. And the reason that this one won out over the other one, because this one kind of gets name dropped in a TV show that should have gotten a second season. My number 3 is the Great Hyperspace Disaster from the High Republic, Live of the Jedi.
Interesting.
It was either going to be this or the destruction of Starlight Beacon, but I picked this one, namely because this also has echoes that are seen all the way into the Acolyte with the planet where Osha and May are born. Where that virgins of the forces, and if Acolyte had gotten a second season, my guess is that Plagueis was doing some shenanigans, and Plagueis shenanigans ultimately lead to Anakin, which ultimately to Skywalker saga, etc., etc., etc. So I see the Great Hyperspace Disaster as the real domino that kicks off all the dominoes of the High Republic, but also continue to domino effect towards the Acolyte, which I think was going to domino effect if you got a sixth season, to the rest of Skywalker Saga and all the Plague shenanigans. So that is why I picked this one, because I knew I was going to have at least one High Republic thing on here. And that's why I decided, you know what, I'm going to pick the thing that kickstarted it all. Because that kickstarts it all, and oh boy, does that echo ring true to this day. It is the spark that launched a Skywalker saga. So yeah, that is my thank you, Acolyte, by the way. So that was the determining factor, really. Acolyte was the determining factor here on why I picked the Great Hyperspace Disaster and not the Structure Starlight Beacon. Because that doesn't get mentioned in the Acolyte, but the Great Hyperspace Disaster clearly does. So that impact is still being felt to at least that day. That's why I picked it. So yeah, it's a very small reason why, but I had to pick it. I knew I needed one High Republic thing in here, and I thought that was probably my most significant one.
Yeah, it's so I have in my honorable mentions. I just have the whole Nile conflict as one.
Fair enough.
In my honorable mentions, because it's really, again, the beginning of the end. If it is, but like you're saying, it kind of kicks off. I could see that as an explanation, sort of one thing that starts it, that keeps going. Kind of like, well, it's a butterfly effect, right?
Right.
It's the flap of the butterfly wings. Yeah, I mean, I don't know on its own how significant it is. It seems to me more that, that's the introduction of the Nile to the galaxy, as a real threat. But yeah, I mean, I can see it. I can see the argument. I'll say that. I think the overall Nile conflict, again, it's how it affects the Jedi at all. That's what I was saying about the Guardian protocols. But that would be my number 6. Would be the Nile conflict. If I could get a number 6, I'll say that.
Oh, interesting. But that, I mean, I see it as sort of I see the prelude to World War I and II at the split of the Carolingian Empire by the Three Sons.
Interesting. Okay.
Because of how it divides, pretty much creates the countries of France, Italy, and Germany. And there's the whole conflict with Alsace-Lorraine, which is very much something that Germany and France become rivals over for almost decades, and finally ends by the time World War II happens, and like they finally just smack Germany. So that's how I kind of see it. It's kind of one of those things where it's like it seems insignificant in the time, but when you really look at it, it's like, oh dang.
Interesting. Yeah.
That one little thing just then leads all the way to Ocean May, and then I still think Ocean May we're gonna play a part in the wider cis shenanigans that we're gonna go on.
I have my coffee. Sorry, God.
But that was my number 3.
There you go. My number 3 is now we're getting to maybe more obvious ones here. So I have kind of this coupled thing of the founding of the Galactic Republic and the rule of 2, the Sith in exile, because that's the thing, and that's maybe why the Nile conflict isn't on this, is because, I mean, whatever the canon version of the Rasan reformations are, whatever we know, Bane goes into exile. Effectively, this 1,000 years of relative stability throughout the galaxy.
Minus a little bit of a conflict with the Nile.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's just a little conflict, right?
A little police action.
It's more, a little police action. It's more it's the effect of, again, it's number 6. But founded Galactic Republic, I mean, and whatever with Malachor and whatever happened there, it's this great shock movement. If anything, that might be the World War II in a way, in the sense of, okay, now we've got to really buckle down and come together as a galactic society. We've got to actually take democratic norms seriously. You got to take the Jedi seriously as it. I mean, that might be related to number 4, but the rules to the Sith are in exile, then the Jedi don't really have a main rival for uh really, for, I mean, say rival as if they're kind of equal, but no, yeah, I mean, there was this great Sith army, great Sith order that was this shadow to them, and the shadow's gone, and so now they're free to be the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. And yes, the founding of the Galactic Republic as we have it, you know, like the founding of the UN, like the founding of I know you have different things about the Marshall Plan, but the New Deal over in those United States, the welfare state, all of these things, again, democratic norms becoming uh, the way we do politics, and taken seriously, and not just in a cynical way, but in a way that we still see all the way to Lena So, that she really takes this seriously as well. I'm sure there's ebbs and flows and things that happen along the way, but um, it really, there must have been a real shock with the siege of Malachor, or whatever it's called, um, the death, the whatever happened, and uh, to really say, no, let's come together, let's actually do this for real. And yeah, I mean, it's what makes Republic politics. I mean, it's also a little bit of a before picture we see with the late Republic and how corrupt it is and how mired in complications it is. Like our more cynical view of politics today in the real world. Yeah, there's got to be this before picture of, yeah, that's the High Republic, but also the founding of the Galactic Republic, and yeah, the rules. I bringing them together. And this is the first one I have a date for. We have 1,000 BBY around there. So yeah, that's my number 3.
I did my number 3 already, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, funny enough, that was my number 2. My number
There we go.
2 is the Last Jedi versus Sith War.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what I call it, at least.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that starts the rule of 2. That sort of creates the galaxy that we see in the prequels.
Mhm.
Yeah, I it's one of those things where I'm very curious if they'll ever cover it. That's definitely something that I am very curious to say, because there's definitely whatever little bits of information we got. It seems like
Mhm.
that war really was quite devastating. It was kind of the last. I always
Yep.
imagine it to be this big m- mythic mythic
Mhm.
thing of like like you kind of imagine reading the Silmarillion. It's like this big mythic thing of like bunch of lightsabers of color and a bunch of lightsabers of red just all clashing and
Yeah.
magic, and it's like planets bu- exploding and then reforming. It's sounds like the Time War from Doctor Who.
Mhm. Right.
And it leaves such a blow that it almost kind of creates a new consensus for the galaxy that lasts at least a good 900 something years before things start to really go to pieces
Mhm.
again. Um, at the very least, like good 400, 600 years before, things like the
Yeah.
Nile start really showing up.
Right.
So, yeah, and, it creates the rule of 2 says they need to
Go into hiding.
finally go into hiding.
Yeah.
The Jedi probably go through a big reformation moment themselves. I mean, they
Mhm.
did in Legends, where like that's where the Jedi kind of, they kind of have to reform from
Mhm.
scratch. The Republic reforms from scratch. Um, everything kind of that's rebuild.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the ripples of history are very long lasting.
Mhm.
It's very much the end of an age. It's the end of the old Republic era.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's my
Yeah.
number 2.
It's almost like the birth of the modern, right? It's the
In
birth,
some
and
ways,
that
yeah.
was, just because like the older Republic, it's almost not prehistoric, but definitely like almost like 1,000, almost also the birth of civilization in a way, right? Whereas
Or modern civilization,
a
because yeah,
modern
like
civilization, at least, right? Um, like the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, even
yeah,
a little bit like that, but also after World War II and the the consensus, the great word. There was for a minute a galactic global consensus with the UN with
It lasted longer in Star Wars than it does in here in the real world.
yeah.
We only
Yeah,
lasted less than 100 years.
Yeah, it lasted maybe about what 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean 9/11 was really the end of it. But yeah. Yeah. All right. My number 2, speaking of 9/11, destruction of Hosnian Prime in 34 ABY.
Interesting.
And here's the thing, and this is I've thought about this for a while. Yes, there is, yes, there's the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire. Yes, there's Endor and Jakku and the rise of the New Republic. But all through that time, from the founding of the Galactic Republic, as far as we know, until Hosnian Prime, the destruction of the New Republic is really what I'm getting at. There has been a centralized institution. It's been a government at all. And the destruction of the Hosnian Prime, this is what I think, and this is kind of a bit of a speculation here. Look, it's as if Coruscant were destroyed during the Empire. It's as if, if just say, and I hope to God this never happens, of course, if Washington, New York, and LA are all destroyed in once, the United States would be done. And the global economy would go, all the institutions of government, of business, of finance, more or less. I mean, yeah, there's also other planets like Kidanomoidia and where's the Munes from, Munalist and all that, the banking clan, all those. But really, Hosnian Prime is where all these institutions are. It's where all the people are. All the senators are there. We see Chancellor Villachem there. We see Corsella there on that balcony. With the destruction of Hosnian Prime, there's no government. That's kind of my point, and as I suspect it's thrown almost back before the Old Republic. This is what I'm curious with the Rey films and whatnot. Yeah, there's communication, so it might not be as hard to get things organized more. But who's going to organize it? What's the Constitution? What's going to happen? I doubt the Ryan Gosling film is going to go into that. Maybe some of the Rey film will, but yeah, I mean, at the end, there's a reason why the Rise of Skywalker, if there was a New Republic, maybe they would have gone to help, but there's no New Republic, so they can't go help with Palpatine, and also maybe that's why Palpatine thinks it's time to go, time to get going, because there's no New Republic to stop him. Also, his body's been figured out, but yeah, I think that's the real end. I mean, I do see your point with Clone Wars and the founding of the Empire, but there's a lot of content. There's definitely a rupture. So there's definitely a rupture. Let me rephrase what I mean. I see your point with the Clone Wars and the founding of the Empire. There's definitely a rupture from what came before, but there's also a lot of continuity in terms of. I mean, that's what Venators are about. That's what the other sprites are about, right? These pointy ships and this government on Coruscant and the Imperial Senate and all that. There's still continuity until even all the way up to Hosnian Prime. And then again, as far as we know, that could be the end of a centralized government in the galaxy.
I don't know, man. I have no idea what they're gonna do. So I'm kind of like, for all we know, they might just take the easy out. I don't know.
Yeah. What would the easy out be, do you think?
Just say there's another republic, and this time it's not going to be as appeasing to the Empire.
Yeah. They have just other capital institutions or whatever. They set them up in emergency. I don't know.
Yeah, the local plants just appointed new senators, and they just all got together like the new Senate.
Maybe, or I'm sure some might have, but a lot probably wanted their independence.
That's possible too.
You know,
I mean, I don't know.
and certainly the Outer Rim is always, and that's the thing with the Clone Wars and the
That's true.
Nihil. The Outer Rim has always wanted their independence. So yeah,
True. So I don't know. I mean, it might be a good point.
yeah,
It's one of those I have to wait and see kind of a
mm,
situations. That's for me.
yeah.
But yeah, that's a very good point.
Okay. So
So I'll mention some of my honorable mentions before I get
mhm,
my number one.
mhm.
Okay, so some of my honorable mentions were the Battle of Naboo, which is a
Good one.
prelude to the Clone Wars and kind of the Kickstarter of the whole Skywalker saga.
Mhm,
The Battle of Yavin, which I consider very much the true turning point, the Galactic Civil War, and the most bloodiest wound
yep.
the Empire ever takes that I don't think it really ever recovers
No,
from.
it is. You're not the only one who considers that. I think that's what George is saying.
Yeah. Obviously, Battle of Endor, Death of the Emperor, the first Death of the Emperor, of
Mhm,
course. Sort of the real,
mhm,
kind of the last desperate stand of the Empire, and it lost. And I
mhm.
think even if Palpatine had survived, I don't think the Empire would have survived that.
Right.
Um, Battle of Jakku, definitely kind of a cleanup situation.
Mhm,
Um, I think I probably would have put Cosme Prime in my honorable mentions, probably lower on the list, but
mhm.
definitely there. Again, I need to know what the ramifications kind
Yeah,
of are
that's true.
long term. Um, and that's kind of it in
Yep.
terms of my honorable mentions. Some of the ones you probably mentioned would have been honorable mentions. I just never thought of them, so it's
Yeah.
like good job. So my number
No, well,
one.
my honorable mentions.
Okay, yeah, you want to?
I mean, I mentioned the Nile conflict already.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned just Empire's End, so I just consider Endor to Jakku and the birth of the Empire's End and the birth of the New Republic on those ends.
Fair.
Here's one again we don't know: Rey's Jedi Order reading group.
I actually never thought about doing the future ones. I just
Yeah,
always, I guess that's funny.
yeah, reading group. I mentioned Clone Wars and the Rise of the Empire.
Mhm.
More broadly, the first and the final order. So Palpatine's return and demise. I mean, this could have made it in the list because it's the true end of the Sith. This could have made my
For
list
now.
for now. And then, I do have kind of the reading group slash when they do become more organized, the Jedi become more organized at some point. Because I mean, the early church did have organization and the whole thing with bishops and whatnot did emerge. It's just with Constantine it gets established, and
Fair.
so yeah, the organization of the Jedi, whenever that is too. So those are my honorable mentions. So yeah, without further ado, what's your number one?
My number one is the founding of the Jedi Order.
Oh, there you go.
Because this is kind of, maybe this is more mythological than this
Yeah,
historical, but Star Wars is the Jedi, and the Jedi are Star Wars. I don't think there's any Star Wars without the Jedi.
mm-hmm.
I think the
Theology time
found
with Joel.
yeah,
There
that really.
you go.
I think the Jedi. I think the founding of the Jedi kind of kickstarts everything.
Hmm.
You could argue the story of Star Wars, the story of the Jedi. It's
Hmm.
like how the story of the first age is the story of the elves.
Hmm.
But no, I mean, I it's everything. It's the domino that kickstarts all that kicks the 25,000 years
Hmm.
of dominoes of Star Wars, right? Every Sith war, every peace, every
Hmm.
magical thingy all stem back to when some person, he, she, they decided, found this forcey thing and realized, oh, cool, I can juggle rocks with it. And then it's like, oh, actually, maybe there's something more philosophical to it. Maybe I should
Yeah.
write a book about it or something.
Hmm.
And then like, ooh, look, I got this cool laser sword thing. I hope this first Jedi is as lame as I'm making them out to be. I think it'd be funny. But no.
No, that would be terrible. Sorry. I
I
mean, the
mean, I
way
do
you're
hope
putting
they're.
it is funny, but
I do hope they are kind of funny. I kind of would love a Jedi,
yeah,
like almost weirdly relatable. Like
yeah.
instead of like a mythical person, I feel like to be in Star Wars wheelhouse.
Like
But
make
anyway,
yeah. So good.
but no, it's like, and then it's the domino. It's the
Hmm.
first true domino of Star Wars. That's
Yeah.
when when the first lightsaber is activated, as far as I'm concerned, that's when Star Wars truly begins, as we all know and love it. So I guess my number one is kind of in the mythic historical sense.
Yeah.
But I still think it's the number one event that really shapes everything moving forward.
That's interesting. I mean, on a philosophical level, of course I agree. Again, I don't put it in the order honorable mentions, and I put it my number 4 about the construction of the Jedi Temple. I think what I'm getting at is maybe just different methodologies there, right? In terms of at the heart of the galaxy, the Jedi Order are at the heart of the galaxy because they're the ones in the story, in the narrative, who who are pursuing the light side, right? They're seeking the balance to find the order, the meaning and purpose of all things. And so the existence of the Jedi at all, I mean, that's interesting. I didn't expect us necessarily to agree on that, but that what this is kind of the question I have at the end. What is the main story? What is the biggest point? Yes. Which is why, I mean, this is kind of a bit of a downer, but my number 1, Commander Cody, the time has come. Execute Order 66. Kind of like with number 2, if the Jedi Order is the most important thing, then its destruction is going to be the most important thing. It's going to be like interesting, like you mentioned with Maul, right? Darth Maul, the show.
Maul, Shadow Lord.
Yeah, that
coming
one.
2026.
Starring Sam Witwer. That's really is. I mean, I don't know what stories go into it, but as far as we know, it really is the first time that the galaxy doesn't care about the Force. That people in the overwhelming society doesn't look to, like I said, doesn't look to this order. They're the first time since the construction of the Jedi Temple, at least, that they don't look up. They don't have those models who they look up to. Still the occupant of the Jedi Temple, but they're forced to look up to Palpatine. They're forced to look up.
Not all of them. I'm sure some of them are quite happy to look up to Palpatine.
That's true.
He's the beloved Chancellor, now Emperor. He did it. He stopped the Clone Wars.
That's actually my point. That's a great point. In that their hope of safety and security and happiness and food and employment, it isn't in the Force. It's in the Empire. And you notice how I didn't say it is in the Jedi, it's in the Empire. No, it's in the Force. And the Jedi, at their best, they don't point to themselves, they point to the Force. I mean, that's Qui-Gon's whole thing. He's right, be mindful of the living Force. Whereas I think, the most the saddest, the tragedy, the thing that Palpatine had tricked the Jedi into doing was to look at themselves and to look at what they need to do. I mean, even with Mace Windu going to arrest Palpatine, not that was necessarily the wrong thing. I don't quite know. I think we've been back and forth on this. But say this is what we have to do and not necessarily what the Force is guiding us to do. And so, I mean, we had that whole episode on it with Madeline's son, in from the Crimson Reign crossover comic, or the flagship comic, where she talked about how the imagination. So, I mean, there I agree with you. The point of the before and after, right? The death of the old world. It's the death of the Jedi. And so that also means then what now? What next? My favorite, the Legends. I love the Dark Times comic. You have Kenobi wrestling with this. You have Cal Kestis wrestling with this. What now? What do we do? We have Caleb Doom, Kanan Jarrus wrestling with this. What now? Hopefully we see Ahsoka do this. Hopefully we'll see Rey do this. We saw Luke's version of it. Saw how that went. Trying to be too much like the Jedi in a situation that didn't really call for it necessarily, although that could be debated. but yeah, it's it's the true change, the big change. And I mean, it happens at the end of the first trilogy, which is wild to think. But I mean, that's the thing, is at least in terms of the film narrative we have, that's of course where the prequels are headed. And it's from there. I mean, that's also the rise of the Empire, but from there that everything kind of looks back. Even Rise of Skywalker, Rey is looking back and trying to figure out her place in all this as someone who wants to walk the way of the Jedi, but doesn't have the institution, doesn't have the system of Padawans and knights and masters to actually walk that way. And so she has to figure out something new. They've come back to the reading group. And so, I mean, that's what I'm going to call Ray's thing. It's going to be called, it's not Ray's order, it's just Ray's reading group. And
That'd be fun.
Ray and Finn's reading group. See what happens there. So, yeah, that's definitely my number one.
That's certainly. I'm surprised I actually didn't have in my honorable mentions. Maybe I mixed that with Clone Wars and Rise of the
Yeah,
Empire.
you kind of put that in together, yeah.
But no, I mean that's such. I mean that's Order 66 is definitely as an event. If you don't want to compartmentalize, couple it, decouple.
Yeah, but you don't want to combine it with the
if you don't want to
others.
combine it with anything,
Mhm.
you know, is certainly an event on its own. Definitely a turning point. I mean that's
Mhm.
kind of the point of the movie. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is the turning point. This is the end of the Jedi Order.
Mhm.
And I always say this is more of a Legends thing. So this is kind of my Legends thing than honestly more
Mhm.
than a canon thing. Although I don't know, I can make the argument about Q of
Yeah.
how I very much, at least in Legends, I always have seen Luke's Jedi Order is not a continuation, not has no continuity with the old order. Maybe there's some
No.
characters in
Yeah.
there, but it's like in terms of like a continuation of like whereas in Legends the Jedi Order have been purged before and they got purged again.
Mhm.
But I've always sort of considered the purges in the past, pre-Order 66, not as fatal enough to be somewhat continuous. It's just they
Mhm.
took a heavy beating. At least that's my interpretation.
Right.
But that's Legends, so I'm not going to get into that too much.
Mhm.
But yeah, I do think that the Jedi Order as an organization definitely have two epochs of
Mhm.
founding, 25,000 years to Order 66,
Yeah.
then a hard cut, and then reforming. Maybe I guess in canon now it's kind of a little blip under Luke for like a couple of years, and then hopefully Rey
Yeah.
gets a little bit further, and bigger,
Mhm.
as a new thing. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this is definitely
Mhm.
this is a turning point. And I think it's definitely somewhere that I'm glad someone mentioned it actually,
Yeah.
because I think it needs to be mentioned. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Order 66 is definitely I think a turning point, and I think it should stand as one of as the true purge of the Jedi.
Mhm.
Even though even High Republic had mentioned before in like Light of the Jedi, where somebody mentioned, we've been purged before and we've had armies, but we've always bounced back.
Yeah.
I, I think I think I think when we get to portraying those other times where the Jedi have had issues, um, you know, I think
Mhm.
that there's got to be something. At least I hope that where it's like, yeah, the Jedi they got took a beating, but I think this is what still makes Order 66 still
Yeah.
the big daddy of all those purges. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's a really good number one. I
Okay.
really like that. Like that's good.
Thanks, Joel. Very encouraging episode today.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. I mean, so there's an some interesting questions there, just because with Luke, like I don't consider it a continuation, words doing talking these days,
I know, right?
continuation of the Jedi Order from Coruscant, based in Coruscant, but he did structure things in the same way, right? He tried to just do the same thing, right, uh with Padawans and detachment. Even, I mean, I forget which book it is, Is it Shadow of the Sith?
It probably, yeah, I think probably is because that's the only
Where
time we see him as Master Luke.
yeah, where like yes, Ben's his nephew, but he's treating him as his Padawan.
Right.
And Ben, yeah, Luke is his uncle, but he has to treat him as his master. That kind of detachment, it's a formal praxium in the same way, which is kind of understandable. I mean, it's all he knows, but so it's important that in a way that fails because this really is the opportunity. It's a great tragedy. Order 66 is the greatest tragedy in galactic history. In that way, it is and effectively a genocide, if you want to call it that. Maybe not a genocide, but a
I think you could
culticide.
call it that. I think you could call it that.
Maybe. I mean, more
It's a
like a cult.
culture.
Yeah,
Culture.
like the death of a religion or whatnot. But it's also for Rey. This is her journey in The Last Jedi. It's a journey throughout the sequel trilogy. But more importantly, I think her journey in what comes next is, okay, what do we do now? What do we take from the past? What do we do that's new? What do we do with the celibacy thing? Because clearly I think Luke kept it. Looks like he did. But
I don't think he married Mara Jade.
No,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, like it looks like he kept it. I mean, maybe Alexiger is going to look at that with. I guess Rin's full and lesbian, but maybe Luke has a lot of interest in the ongoing. We'll see what happens there, but yeah,
Luke and Afra. That's good. I'm kidding.
No, Afra's definitely a lesbian.
Oh,
Afra does not do dudes.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, what was I gonna say? You just the whole thing of just starting kind of from scratch, just can throw things on the wall and see what sticks. And that's the thing with Rey and her character, as someone who really looks forward and looks upward. There's that phrase, looking upward. Looks outward and sees opportunity. I mean, like the scavenger, right? Sees what she can collect from the past and what the Force is guiding her to do and collect from the past, including Finn. I think Finn's one of the people she has to collect. Maybe Sabine's still alive. That'd be interesting. She's old, but
I doubt Filoni's gonna kill her. You know how he is. But yeah, probably old Sabine.
That'd be wild, if she
Ahsoka's out there. You know it. She's
Ahsoka's eternal. Ahsoka's the daughter of Mortis, so
Yeah.
There we go. I don't know. Ahsoka eternal.
Grogu.
I don't know.
I add Grogu to the council.
Yeah, but even then, it's not a matter of a formal council. It's still going to be the reading group, and the reading group to kind of discover for themselves as a smaller community what they need to do. So
it's gonna be Rey's X-Men school.
Yeah, there we go.
What's also? Yeah, pretty much. One other thing I want to mention, since we got some time, and I just wanted to just kind of bring this up a little bit. Which may also kind of, if they ever decide, hey, the Jedi taken beings before. I think the biggest difference between what happened in Order 66 and what happened the other times, and I can say this for both Legends and Canon, so I'm adding a little bit of my Legends context here, is those other times, like when the Jedi got purged in Knights of the Old Republic 2, there was still a Republic. The Republic was still on the Jedi side.
Yeah.
The Order 66, and this is how some stories frame it, and I think you can even argue maybe this is how George Lucas likes to frame it, because I think George is a lot more pro-Jedi, is Republic betrays the Jedi. It's the Republic that turns on the Jedi. Palpatine corrupts the Republic. The Republic turns on the Jedi. The Republic destroys the Jedi. The Republic becomes the Empire. And I think that's also a big difference as well, because definitely that's why it's so widespread. Whereas those other times when the Jedi got really culled down by the Sith, it was a Sith Empire that was not the Republic, it was a Sith Empire that was doing its own thing. The Republic was still very much on equal footings.
Yeah.
And the Republic was still very much allied with the Jedi.
Hmm.
Here, the Republic falls as well
Yeah.
and turns on the Jedi. So not only
Well,
do you have like
yeah.
a Jedi destroyed, they have an empire, a republic that's become an empire now hunting them down
Mhm.
completely. So I think that's just an interesting a difference between
Yeah.
legends and maybe in canon, like why those other times the Jedi have kind of had almost their big beatdowns recovered a lot more
Yeah.
quickly. Where it's like this is like, oh shoot, now that the whole republic has turned on us.
Mhm.
Where last time, even if we had our differences, they never came and hunt us down. Whereas now
Yeah.
they are as
I
the
mean,
empire.
that's the thing with Order 66 is that they're in the wrong place at the right time. Yeah. The clones are there. They're the Grand Army of the Republic, and almost literally flicks the switch.
Mhm.
Well, flicks the switch to contact Cody. But um, yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting thing of when the Jedi have the Republic to defend, they then have
And
the
vice
Republic
versa.
and vice versa. They have the Republic to fall back on. That's what we see in High Republic, right? It's
Right.
they're partners, and it's with the RDC, the Republic Defense Coalition, which is a coalition of different planetary security forces, and it's working brilliantly, and they're all in lockstep. Whereas, yeah, it's when the Republic becomes the Empire, right? And that's another weird question. Maybe this is a good whole episode for us to do one day. Is to what extent is the Empire the successor to the Republic, and to what extent is it a destruction of both separatists and Republic and just a new thing built on top? And
Yeah.
so because there's continuity, clearly there's rupture,
Mhm.
but yeah, in that case, that's a great point. The Grand Army of the Republic is the only thing that could take the Jedi out. So that might be another thing with Rey. She's thinking here, let's not get so in cahoots with any kind of institutional authority, because there's a parallel. Here's a parallel. Where are we here? Ray's going to be the Anabaptist order, the Anabaptist group, because so the Anabaptists, doesn't quite work, but they were a group that believes something considered to be so off that both Protestants and Catholics hunted them down and killed them, like destroyed them, like they with the blessing of the government authority, civil authorities, of course.
Mhm.
Like they executed them, and so even now that they survived, and now they're considered very much part of the Christian family. But they have a very strong sense of we don't trust civil institutions, and they're having a very important voice right now. They're very pacifist. You hear of peace church, the peace church traditions,
Mhm.
like the Mennonites. Menno Simons was one of these part of these Mennonites, part of this group, and yeah, they have a very much. We don't want to be in bed with governments because our history taught us that lesson. We were all raised this minority, and so I wonder
Mhm.
if Ray is going to kind of go in this direction too, and have those kind of safeguards in place.
It's possible. I'd
Mhm.
be very
Yeah.
curious. But yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, good,
If
good.
she ever goes in this direction of having this larger institution,
That's fair.
I think the growth, the emergence of a widespread institution is inevitable, just because of how many force sensitive folks there are who want to serve the light, and the force seems to be willing the Jedi Order to come back. Like you said, that's their argument, right? Yeah, we've been purged before. We trust in the force, and the force will be with us and bring us back. Especially as we let go of pretensions to power and violence. Um, we can really hear the force more because can kind of those concerns. That's again that's the Clone Wars. Those concerns can lead us to drown out our sense of the Force, and that is the shroud of the dark side. So yeah, definitely interesting. Again, what does Rey collect from the past, and others too? I'd like to see others. I'd like to see a Sava from Barlath come and help her out, or something. Beaumont Kin, tell us what to do. Help us out here.
I remember there are multiple Jedi orders where it's like you got one that's like the Catholics and they're on Coruscant, and you got the Pope, and then Rey's like over here with her little X-Men school.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what Luke was trying to do. Was what came before.
But anyway, but yeah. Those are our list, everyone. Quite a Matthew, quite a good list.
Yeah.
I had a lot of ones that I didn't even think about. I really liked your methodology. You went with anything about my list that stuck out to you?
Again, I was surprised that I was kind of expecting you to do more with galactic governments, and you did, and of course you did. But I was kind of expecting, like, your number one almost to be the founding of the Galactic Republic or something. But yeah, so it's pleasantly surprised to see kind of that agreement, at least, that the existence of the Jedi is the most important thing.
I think the fun thing is that apparently the Jedi founding and the Galactic Republic founding are so close to each other. It's like you could almost say it's the same thing.
Like the old Republic.
Yeah. Like the first Galactic Republic was founded around the same time. I'm actually not quite sure which ones comes first. I know in Legends it was, I think, the Republic, and the Jedi came after.
What was the name of the chicken that hatched from that egg? No,
I'm not quite sure. I'll have to remember. It's in Essential Guide to Warfare.
Yeah. No. Yeah, the interesting legend. So yeah. What was I gonna say? Also, that whole point of the Carolingian, and the way the butterfly effect. I was going the opposite direction for the butterfly effect. Saying what's the culmination of the butterfly effect? But yeah, you have like the founding of the Jedi Order. You have the Great Disaster. You have these other smaller events that lead to bigger things. I mean, I'm now thinking of the Carolingians and World War One. Like that makes sense. It does.
Because a video about that, because that's where I got that from.
The founding of Europe as we know it. Yeah.
Pretty much. So,
if
only Charlemagne had one son, maybe things would turn different. Okay. But yes, that was our list, everybody.
Yeah.
And I have an announcement for my next topic.
So we'll get there. When we get there. But there's for now. So sit tight for the announcement for the next week's topic. But for now, that is a good place to wrap things up. We should do more of these listicles more often.
We've done a few with comics.
Done a few. Books. But yeah, like this is it's a great way of talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
The way we do it here on Ion Canon. Thanks everyone for joining us. Let us know, what's your list? What are the top 5 most important events in canon history? Let us know what you thought of the conversation. What do you think of the First Order and their relationship to the Empire and the Guardian protocols, and where that what may have happened with that and whatnot, the culture of the Jedi, etc. Please do comment below in those boxes down below. They ain't going anywhere. Also, do give this video a like and a share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Joel, again, this has been fun. We got to do these more often. Where can they find you? This is a great idea, by the way.
Thank you.
Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky. I also control the Ion Canon Pod Blue Sky account, as well as you can find me on the Star Wars Underworld Discord page.
Yeah, that's Ion Canon Blue Sky, not Ion Canon Pod. Ion Canon.bisky.social, BSKY as well. There it is. You can find my personals, MNAUG1138, and also that's Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Instagram also beaches.foodie. I got to upload something tonight involving ice cream. So check that out if you want to see a good photo of Ed's ice cream here in the beaches in Toronto. neighborhood. Yeah, please give that a look, and of course NEUG 485 on the Bird app. Let's go Oilers! Let's go Oilers! This coming up on the Tractor Beam on Wednesday. It's Fear the Jedi number 5 of 5, Jedi Knights number 4 of 12, I think 20 something. I don't know, forget. And Insider 231. So entirely set before the Phantom Menace, 2 High Republic stories, 1 pre-Phantom Menace story with the Jedi Order there. Also Jango Fett and Shakti and Qui-Gon. It'll be fun. So check that out. Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld channel, as well as Underworld Facebook and Canon Twitch and Underworld Twitch. Yes, again, the Iron Cannon pod or Iron Cannon Blue Sky. Also the flagship at the SW. That's on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, believe Threads, etc., etc. Please do check that out. And next week,
there will be no next week.
Okay.
Next week will be a break for me as well.
Okay.
But on June 18th, wait,
16th.
16th, June 16th, I'm checking. Yep, June 16th, on Monday, I will be joined by a certain Mr. Dominic Jones to discuss.
Who's that? Where? Yeah.
I know. Who is that guy? He's a cool dude. He's from Canada. Like,
it'll look like this.
Yeah, it'll look like that.
See, this is the height difference, guys. This is the height difference.
It is a height difference, yeah.
Sorry,
Anyway, to discuss
Mhm.
the one, the only, the book trilogy that started all, the original Thrawn trilogy from 1990s. Yay!
Good old Legends look back.
Mhm.
There we go. The ultimate Legends look back, I'd say. So yeah. So that means I'm going to be taking a break for 2 weeks. Well, you'll see me on Tractor Beam, but yeah, we'll both be taking a break next week, and then I'll be on a break while you and Dom enjoy chatting about Star Wars, chatting about Thrawn, chatting about Legends. There we go. Yeah, that does it for the Iron Cannon podcast. Thanks everyone for joining. Please do check out everything around the network. But until then, Joel, let's build this thing and head home.